I'm sure,
That's right. That's right. It can get pretty intense, but we know it's, nothing that we have a stake in. It's just fun to banter.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, once again, just want to thank everyone for taking time to jump on the Thomas Scientific Cleanroom Masterclass today. We'll be getting started shortly, so just give us a couple more minutes. We'll let some other people jump on and we'll get rolling.
Yeah, just a couple minutes more and then we can kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like we're about 2 minutes away.
Really nice to see all the interest in the webinar. Thank you, everybody who has jumped on, and hopefully Michael and I can shed some light on some stuff for you. So look forward to getting into it here in just a sec.
Looks like we also have a lot of people on our Facebook Live streaming as well. So we have a number of attendees showing up today. This is great. We'll get going in about 1 minute, guys.
Yeah, and to RJ's question, yes, we are recording this, so we will be able to send that out after. Michael and I are hoping it's something you'll want to watch again. We're going to do our best.
Do the best we can. We always do. So. Okay, it's actually 2 o'clock Eastern. Adam, do you feel like we should go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I'd say let's give it a go, and hopefully if anybody jumps on late, they'll be able to catch up before we get into the heart of the presentation.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to take a moment and just thank all of you for taking the time to jump on Thomas Scientific's Cleanroom Masterclass. The topic for today is how to successfully design and build your cleanroom. And we're very excited to have you attend today. As we get started, one of the things we would like to ask is if each of you could send in via chat just where you're logging on from. We would like to be able to have visibility to the different parts of the country and world that we're touching today with this valuable information. Who is this webinar for? It's for anyone that wants to gain better knowledge into the process required to properly design and build a clean room. Who it's not, probably the certified expert in clean rooms would probably be my best guess. We do want to encourage everyone to please try to stay on until the end of the webinar. We actually have a free gift for you at the end. We're going to be able to provide you an ultimate guide to clean room design, and we'll feature the download link whenever we wrap up the webinar before the Q&A session. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Michael Marigi. I'm one of the business leaders with Thomas Scientific's Cleanroom CE Solutions team. I have 25 years business experience in laboratory and clean room supply distribution with a specialty in customer on-site supply chain services such as vendor managed inventories and things like that. Joining me today is Adam Zepka. Adam is the National Sales Manager for Angstrom Technology. Adam brings over 10 years experience in the designing and building of clean rooms, and is actually overseeing over 100,000 square feet of design and building projects involving all different types of ISO classifications. So definitely well qualified to teach us today. And as I talk about the alliance between Thomas and Angstrom Technology, it was, what we were looking at was where we can increase services to our customers. And we started looking at clean room construction. And as we were trying to determine who to align with, one of our objectives was to be sure we were aligning with a best-in-class supplier in that space, an experienced company, and most importantly, a dependable company, because they would be working with a number of our valued clients. And we just want to be sure as we bring other people into our customers that they carry themselves the same way Thomas does on a daily basis, which is being customer centric. Whenever we looked at Angstrom, it was self-apparent very quickly that this was a great fit. Angstrom brings over 30 years building experience in the industry and has actually designed and built over 1,000 modular clean rooms. Of course, Thomas Scientific, we've been around for over 100 years and are specialists in laboratory distribution, but we also distribute clean room PPE supplies, chemicals, packaging, and equipment to over 5,000 production customers throughout North America. And then the market segments that both of the companies operate in align. So we're both predominantly in biopharma, compound pharmacy, microelectronics, med device, and other industries. And so it really just built the perfect alliance, and we're very excited to announce this alliance today. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Adam for the educational content.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Michael, for that really nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I appreciate you all taking time out of your busy day. I know everybody's got a lot on their plate. So really, on top of what Michael has already said, my goal in today's presentation is to really give you an idea of what cleanroom and cleanroom design is all about. I know some of you may know some about it, some of you may not know anything about it. And for those of you who don't know anything, I can really empathize. Before I started at Angstrom, I had very little knowledge of what cleanrooms were or how they operated. But thankfully, I was brought under the wing of some of the foremost experts in the industry, and I learned kind of all the tricks of the trade. But having been on your side of the table, I can really speak to some of those challenges that you may be facing when tasked with building a clean room. So really where we'll get started is, you need a clean room. How do we start from there? And there's a couple of things to do at the beginning. The first is to really define your needs. And as Michael mentioned, at the end of this webinar, we're going to have a free ultimate guide to cleanroom design that will contain a lot of the information we're going to talk about. Specifically, it's going to help you start the process with these few things. And that's really determining the size of cleanroom that you need, determining if you know the cleanroom wall construction that you'll need. And we'll get into that here in just a little bit. One of the big things is the ISO classification that your cleanroom will need to be. And again, we'll touch on that later in the presentation. And then lastly, turnkey versus non-turnkey. This is something that is really one of those items that is discussed pretty prevalently. So we'll touch on that towards the end. The next thing you're going to want to do when you know you need a clean room is specify your budget or understand what type of budget you have for this clean room build. If you don't know where to start with that, we can help. We do this day in, day out, and so that's one of the areas that we can advise in. Lastly, you're going to want to set your timeline. Know when that clean room needs to be up and running. Know when everything needs to be in place. The thing to keep in mind here is that on average, a clean room project takes from 2 to 4 months to complete from the time that we're released. So there is a bit of lead time that is involved, and it's important that you plan ahead to make sure that you're ready to go when you need to be ready to go. So first we'll get into cleanroom wall types. And the first construction that we're going to talk about is what we call hardwall. It's pictured there in the slide. And hardwall is one of our more prevalent constructions that we utilize. It's prevalent because a lot of applications in today's day and age require tight temperature and humidity control. With hardwall systems, they provide an insulative panel of R12 value that allows us to control the temperature and humidity within the space separate from the surrounding environment. We also set these hardwall cleanrooms up mainly as a recirculating airflow, which we'll touch on later in the presentation. But this allows for that temperature and humidity control ability. As you can see in the picture, there's a solid door that leads into the cleanroom. And with the hardwall construction, there are security features that can be added, such as key card access, interlocking functions. And that's one of the nice features of this type of wall system. For customers who don't have a lot of floor space, hardwall clean rooms can be engineered to have a second story on top, whether that second story be used for offices, storage, or even additional clean room space. The capability to add a second floor to the Hardwall clean room is there, allowing you to essentially double the floor space that you have available. So in most instances, Hardwall is a good option for those looking to construct. The second type of wall system that we're going to talk about is what we call rigid wall. Again, it's featured in a picture on the slide so you can get a feel for what it looks like. But compared to the hard wall, rigid wall offers full visibility from floor to ceiling. The framing is an aluminum framing, and the panel insert is generally an acrylic or polycarbonate clear insert. As you can see in the picture, it provides great visibility into the clean room itself, while also giving you the rigidity that the hard wall offers. So again, you can see pictured a solid door. With the rigid wall system, you can also add security features like key card access or interlocking if needed. And that's one of the benefits about rigid wall. Compared to hard wall construction, generally rigid wall is set up as a once through airflow scheme, and we'll touch on that later in the presentation. The last type of cleanroom construction that we offer is what we call soft wall. And soft wall, again pictured here, is an aluminum frame with a vinyl curtain wall around it. These rooms are very flexible. They offer a lot of flexibility both in manufacturing and positioning to the end user. Depending on size of the soft wall cleanroom, casters can be added to the feet, allowing it to easily roll around your facility and be a mobile cleanroom. If they get really large, then we would have to forego the casters, but in certain instances, those are available. This too is a once through airflow setup where air is brought in through the HEPA filters on top and exhausted out at a gap between the curtain and the floor, low to not kick particulate up. These rooms are the most cost-effective type of construction. They have the quickest lead time and offer the most flexibility after the fact. What I wanted to get into next is a question that we often get. And again, as with all of this information, a lot of this info is going to be contained in that ultimate guide to cleanroom design if you stick on till the end. But one of the biggest items that we're discussing on a daily basis with our customers is ISO classifications. And one of the confusing parts about ISO classifications is the interchangeability of ISO classes and federal 209E standards. And you can see the nomenclature between the two areas on this chart. On the left-hand side, you have the ISO classifications, and the right-hand side, you have the federal 209E standards. Essentially, the United States, about 10 to 12 years ago, was heavily in the federal 209E standards, and they were following that nomenclature. Over these last 10 to 12 years, the ISO classifications have been adopted from Europe, and that really has caused a lot of confusion. What this chart is meant to illustrate is that ISO classifications and federal 209E standards are essentially one and the same. For instance, class 100,000 of the federal standards translates to ISO 8 in the ISO standards. So it's really not as scary or confusing as some may think. And I wanted to try to explain that to help with any questions as you start to design your own clean rooms. When we talk about the ISO standards in more detail, or the federal 209E standards for that matter, what we're really digging into is the allowable particle count inside the cleanroom per cubic meter. The best way to think about ISO classifications is more like a golf score. The lower the number of the ISO classification, the cleaner the cleanroom. For instance, ISO 7 classification is cleaner than an ISO 8 classification. And that all revolves around the allowable particulate count in those specific ISO classes. The driving factor that helps to control the particulate count is really the air change rate, or ACH, which you'll see in that third column from the right. And as you can tell, for each ISO class, there's an allowable range of air changes per hour. And this really speaks to the fact of there's really not a one-size-fits-all approach to cleanroom or cleanroom design. When you come to us to talk about a cleanroom project that you have, we're not looking for you to tell us how many air changes you need. Essentially, we're looking for you to tell us what ISO classification you need, and then we're going to back into that air change rate. The factors that contribute to the air change rate, or ACH, really revolve around the process or procedure, the number of people, everything that's going on inside the room. So that's one thing that on the design side will work with you to determine or develop a solution that not only meets the ISO classifications, but also is within budget. So early on in the presentation, I talked about the different airflow setups. I talked about recirculating and I talked about once through. In a second, we'll get into the once through, but this design is what we call a recirculating setup. As you can see, there's an air handler that's positioned on top of the clean room, and that's providing all your cool conditioned air. That's supplying air into a ceiling plenum and allowing motorized fan filter units to pull it into the clean room, as you can see from those blue arrows. Once that filtered air is in the clean room, we then exhaust it low near the floor through low wall return air grills and back through either return ducts or double wall chases to the plenum, creating that closed loop system. This allows for tight temperature and humidity control, but also from a maintenance perspective, it allows for easy maintenance of your clean room. The working feature on the HEPA filter that needs any sort of ongoing maintenance is the pre-filter that would be housed on top of the FFU. In our design setup with a recirculating system, that pre-filter is located in that low wall return air grill, meaning the only changing that you're needing to do is with that pre-filter in that low wall grill. If that pre-filter is changed out with a quarterly or semi-annual frequency, your HEPA filters are going to last on average 10 to 15 years without needing to be changed. So it's a very maintenance-free option that allows you tight temperature and humidity control for those strict environments. Now, conversely, there's what we call the once-through airflow setup. And effectively, you can see in this diagram, there's the same type of ceiling plenum, but rather than being supplied by an air handler, we're pulling air in from the left from the ambient environment. That air is going still through our FFUs and HEPA filters and being pushed down into the room. And then it's being exhausted out in those same low wall return grills. But rather than being captured and recycled through a duct or double wall chase, we're exhausting back into the ambient environment. So in this case, we're utilizing existing air, meaning we don't need as large of an HVAC unit to maintain the sort of temperature and humidity control. But because we're using ambient air, we also don't have as much control capability over that temperature and humidity. We're more of a servant to the surrounding environment in this setup. At the beginning of the presentation, I touched on turnkey versus non-turnkey cleanroom design. And this is one of those items that can be really make or break to a successful cleanroom project. When you look at a cleanroom project from a high level, you have the cleanroom itself, and then you have the utilities that are connected to the cleanroom that allow the cleanroom to operate properly. So these utilities would be things like HVAC, electrical, flooring, fire protection, those types of items. And in a turnkey instance, Angstrom Technology is not only designing the clean room, but we're also designing those utilities and installing those utilities. So in that instance, you have kind of a one point of contact, one point of responsibility, and you benefit from years of experience, knowledge, and understanding in cleanroom and cleanroom design. In a non-turnkey application, the risk that you run is that the subcontractor that you utilize for HVAC or electrical may or may not have cleanroom design experience. In an instance where they don't have cleanroom design experience, there is substantial risk to the functionality of the cleanroom after the fact. I can't tell you the amount of times that we've been called in saying, hey, my HVAC contractor messed up. My temperature and humidity is out of whack. We need you to come in and fix this. And so that's really one of the benefits to a turnkey approach versus a non-turnkey approach. For instances like pharmaceutical compounding, USP 797 and 800, if that clean room were to fall out of temperature or humidity spec, then they cannot operate or produce any product inside of that clean room until the situation is rectified. So that illustrates really the importance of having a proper design and installation. So this is an example of a mechanical design, and essentially what we'll do is our team will draw this up, and then we'll utilize a local HVAC contractor that we will sub, hire, and manage to install at your facility, depending on where you're located in the country. And the thought behind this process is we control the design, the local contractor installs. In an instance where there's an issue, say you have a freon leak in your HVAC unit, then the installing contractor is right down the road and they're able to act quickly to rectify that situation. For MEP design, the big items, and real quick, for those of you who don't know, MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And that's essentially the other half of the turnkey package, if you will, the clean room and then the MEP design and install. So for clean room mechanical, the question that we often get is, do I need a dedicated HVAC unit or can I share with an existing unit I have on site? And the answer to that is it depends. And I know I'm being a little vague with that, but the reason for that is it's very situational. So in an instance like USP 797 or 800, those regulations require a maximum of 68 degrees and a maximum relative humidity of 60%. If you were to share that HVAC unit that would maintain those temperature and humidity requirements with an office environment, let's say, that office environment is going to be freezing and you're going to get some complaints. So that illustrates why it's important to understand whether or not you need a dedicated HVAC unit or you need a shared HVAC unit. I would say with the projects that we build, 90 to 95% of them will utilize dedicated HVAC based on the conditions that they need in the clean room and what's available on site. The 5% that can utilize a shared system have really a perfect environment where the existing equipment is large enough to support the heat load of the clean room, and the controls are set up in a way that they can offset the temperature in the office to make it more livable. So I would say if you're tasked with designing and building a clean room project at your facility, more likely than not, you're going to need a dedicated HVAC unit. Electrical for the clean room is fairly straightforward. It's really just powering the lights and the HEPA filters, any sort of convenience or special power outlets, and then process equipment. And electricians can easily incorporate their work into any modular wall system, and we can advise on how to do that. For fire protection, because we're building a facility within an existing facility, fire protection is generally needed inside the clean room, separate from the ambient environment. And with that, you have two options, either a wet system or a chemical system. 90 to 95% of the clean rooms that we build will utilize a wet system that allows you to tie into your existing building fire protection and drop it down into the clean room. Those that can't use a wet system are generally a more hazardous environment or a more strict containment environment. And then we have to look at a chemical system. The problem with chemical systems is they're very expensive and very cumbersome. They take a lot of time to install, and there's no opportunity to tie those into an existing building system. So more often than not, if you have a clean room project to complete, you're going to utilize a wet fire protection system. Lastly, with MEPs, we want to talk about flooring. Flooring is a big question for a lot of our customers. Do I need flooring? What kind of flooring should I use in my clean room? And the answer to that is you really have three options. You have an epoxy paint, a heat welded vinyl floor, or a raised floor. The raised floor is generally used in very clean clean rooms, ISO 4 and below. So the majority of cleanroom customers aren't going to get into the raised floor territory. The majority are going to be in either epoxy or vinyl. And the difference between the two is fairly stark. So for a large manufacturing clean room, let's say 5 to 10,000 square feet, epoxy is going to be your most cost efficient and durable option. Basically, it's a paint that's laid down on an existing concrete slab after they scarify the floor, and it's sufficient for cleanroom operation. It's impervious, it's seamless, and it allows for a lot of harsh chemicals to be used to clean it. Welded vinyl is generally used in smaller, less high traffic clean rooms. It's required in USP 797 and 800 clean rooms. And so essentially it's a vinyl sheet that's rolled out, heat welded at every seam, and then coved up the wall. Again, creating an impervious floor with no cracks or crevices for particulate to settle. So one of the big things to consider with flooring, because a question we get is, can I just seal my concrete slab and won't that work? And the answer to that is, at the end of the day, a sealed concrete slab would likely suffice. But the problem with the concrete slab is A, its appearance, and B, it's not doing anything to change the culture. Something as little as epoxy paint on the floor of a clean room can be really organizationally changing as far as a culture perspective. When employees walk on that floor, they know that they need to operate differently. They're going to wear their gowns and garments. It basically creates a visual representation that this area is different from the surrounding environment. So having the right kind of floor inside your clean room is important. So now that we've gotten through all that design work, we've gotten to the point where construction is right around the corner. And that can be a scary time for some customers. But the good news here is it's painless. As long as you can clear the space for us and make sure that we have a clear path to get material to where the clean room will be located, you won't have to worry about a thing. Our construction crew is experienced with putting these up. Because all the modular material is manufactured off site, we're essentially assembling when we get on site, where compared to stick built construction or stud and drywall, they're physically building that space and constructing it right there. Our process with the modular systems is clean and can take place right alongside of where you may be operating your daily operations. So it's conceivable to think that you can run normal operations not 5 feet from where the clean room is being constructed. Average construction time is going to take approximately 3 days to 3 weeks, depending on the size of the clean room, but it goes together very quickly and very cleanly. And then really what I wanted to talk about lastly today was the future of clean rooms and clean room technology and where we see things going. So when I first started in clean room design, HEPA filtration was one of those things that it would be put in the ceiling and you would forget about it. Over these years, technology has evolved to essentially give us what you see in that picture there, where it's complete control over the filter system that we install in the clean room. Control to the point where you can dial into any single HEPA filter and see its output, see its motor speed, see its differential pressure. You can monitor that not only from the cleanroom control panel, but from your laptop, your smartphone, anything that's connected to the internet service that the cleanroom is aligned with. You can also add differential pressure, temp and humidity monitoring, continuous particle counting if need be, all to that same control system. So there's a lot more capability with HEPA filters and HEPA filter control now than there ever was previously. And it's important to take advantage of that, which we do in our cleanroom designs. Along with this control system, you can also tie the cleanroom itself into any backnet or facilities monitoring system that you have, allowing your maintenance teams or your facilities engineers to also keep an eye on that cleanroom. So it basically gives visibility into the daily operations of the cleanroom so that you can be assured that it's not only working properly, but it's working effectively. When we talk about cleanroom certification and balancing, this is a certifier air balancer's dream. They can do all of their manipulations and controls right from that control panel, making it so that they don't have to get above ceiling or to the unit to do any of those changes. So it's easy for certification to achieve the results that you need. And from a balancing perspective, it's done in a heartbeat. Well, we're on the topic of HEPA filters. It may make sense to quick talk about room side replaceable versus non-room side replaceable filters. And basically the names say it all. So in a room side replaceable filter setup, essentially the perforated screen that you see from the room side will drop down into the room, and you can change that filter from inside the clean room itself. It's a quick and very clean process. A non-room side replaceable filter is going to require that the filter housing be taken out of the ceiling and that the HEPA itself be changed either at floor level or in the ceiling plenum. The difference between the two is that there's a fairly sizable cost increase up front for the room side replaceable versus the non-room side replaceable. If you remember, I talked about our clean room design setup and how we utilize low wall return grills that house the pre-filters. If those pre-filters are maintained properly, quarterly, semi-annually, depending on your facility and operation, the HEPA filters in the ceilings will last on average from 10 to 15 years. So it really negates or minimizes the need for the room side replaceable option, and hence that upfront cost. I would say of all the rooms that we design, 85 to 90% will be the non-room side replaceable filters. It's just not a feature that is completely necessary, but it's available in specific instances. So with that, I know you're probably all sick of hearing me. I'll throw it back to Michael and let him talk about cleanroom equipment and consumables.
Yeah, Adam, great job and definitely valuable insight that you were able to share. So thank you. As you're completing your clean room construction project, the other area you want to pay special attention to is the gowning room. The proper layout of your furniture is critical to the functionality and flow of your clean room. Our design experts can work with your team in tandem to help make sure that the gowning room is set up properly. In addition, as you're creating your processes and procedures to educate your employees on how to properly gown and clean the clean room, our team can work in conjunction with your quality team to be sure that you have the proper educational materials and processes to ensure consistent operation of your clean room going forward. And then, as part of that, one of the things that this alliance brings you is Thomas has the ability to provide sample products to your company based on the ISO requirements that you have for your clean room that you're able to use and actually test out before you go into full operation. But then it's extremely important, especially during this global pandemic, to identify a dependable source for your ongoing supplies. At Thomas, we carry all the major brand names that you're used to hearing about, as well as a number of other quality manufacturers. We have 8 different strategic warehouses located throughout the United States. So being able to get product to you in a timely manner and have inventory that's virtually local, we would have that ability as well. In addition, because of what we've been dealing with the global supply chain, Thomas has been extremely creative in developing an inventory assurance program so we can actually work with your production and procurement team to ensure that the products are available when needed going forward. And then for customers that as they launch this clean room, they realize that there's going to be other labor requirements. If your company is looking to minimize the amount of labor required to manage your supplies and your gown room supplies, you can talk with Thomas. We actually can come in and do a site assessment and determine what type of site-specific supply chain services would benefit you. And again, this could also include vendor-managed inventory to help reduce that workload. So as we transition into the Q&A session, I do want to encourage everyone to please go into the URL that's featured on this slide. You'll get a download link for your ultimate guide to cleanroom design. And for those of you that are actually ready, feel free to go ahead and schedule a free discovery session. We'll have one of our experts reach out to you and just be sure that we're putting together the best solution for your unique requirements. And with that, let's go ahead and open up to the floor for questions.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for listening. We'll get into some of the questions here. Let me kind of go through them. So Diane asked, can I redesign my clean room if my needs change? And the answer to that, Diane, is yes. With our modular construction setup, we always advise our customers to build for what you need now. Because that modular piece is always going to be there after the fact, we can manipulate your clean room any way we need to as your needs change, whether that mean expand your clean room, contract your clean room, move it to a different facility altogether. That's completely doable at any point in time. RJ asked, is there a way to condition the air for clean rooms that don't have a dedicated HVAC unit? And the answer to that, RJ, is yes. The issue that you may run into if you're going to utilize ambient air or a shared air conditioner is through our fan filter units, we heat up the air as it enters the clean room. On average, that heat gain is about 2 to maybe 3 degrees in certain instances. So if you're utilizing a shared HVAC unit or you're utilizing ambient air, you run the risk of your clean room running hot. So while it's doable, you may experience issues, but we can always tackle that with you when we look at your clean room project. Lauren asked, how much will my clean room cost? And that's a good question, Lauren, with kind of a loaded response, and it really depends. So it's going to be dependent on your ISO classification, your size, your ceiling height. The factors go on and on. But essentially, the way to think about it is the larger the clean room, the lower the cost per square foot. There's an economies of scale associated with that. On average, the majority of ISO 8 clean rooms are going to range anywhere from $100 up to $200 a square foot, depending on the bells and whistles that are added. So if you needed help with budgeting, please feel free to reach out to us and we can help walk you through what to expect there. Matt asks, what is the problem with just concrete flooring? And Matt, I can't say that there is a problem with just concrete flooring. As long as it's sealed and there aren't any cracks and crevices, concrete flooring will suffice for a clean room. The one thing to consider is really just appearance, aesthetics, and then in certain instances, the functionality if you had a static, sensitive environment. But clean room flooring is more so to ensure that the floor is crack and crevice free, that it's impervious, and that it can stand up to the chemical cleaning. So if you have a sealed concrete floor, then there's nothing to say it won't work, but you may like to look or explore an epoxy floor in that instance. Jed asks, how often do you have to replace the HEPA filters if you're using ambient air? And that's a great question, Jed. So in an ambient air setup, like I showed in the slideshow, those supplier grills that are taking the air in have the same pre-filters in them that we have in the low wall filters. So we're filtering that air as it's coming in. That prolongs the life of the HEPA filters. In an instance like a soft wall where your clean room ceiling is just open to the ambient environment, the pre-filters will be located on top of the actual FFUs. So the life of your HEPAs is still going to be the same, but you may need to increase the frequency that you're changing out those pre-filters. Teshpo asks, is it possible to modify a drywall building into a clean room? The answer there is yes. We do retrofits quite often. It's really the feasibility of it is dependent on the space and really mainly the overhead clearance. So if we're working in an existing space, a lot of times what we run into is low overhead clearance that won't allow us to filter the room the way that we would typically do in a modular build. So to answer your question, yes, you can make a drywall building into a clean room, but it would really depend on the specific features of that drywall room. Neil asks, what kind of cost would be, or would an ISO 5-6 clean room be, 5,000 square foot, and what is the smallest? So when you start getting into ISO 5 and 6, Neil, you start getting into very clean rooms. For 5,000 square feet, that would be what we would consider an extremely large ISO 5 or ISO 6 space. When you get into those classifications, you're starting to get into the $300 to $400 a square foot cost range and up. They're just very clean. They require a lot more filtration, as such, a lot more return air, and it's kind of a domino effect from there. So cost can increase the cleaner that you get. As far as what is the smallest, there is no size limit. We've built clean rooms that are 50 square feet, and we've built clean rooms that are 50,000 square feet. So really the sky's the limit there. Eric asks, what type of walling could be applied on concrete or drywall, or is an epoxy coating sufficient? And that's a great question. We get that quite a bit. We have a furring system, part of the modular construction, that can be applied to a concrete or drywall wall that will make it sufficient for cleanroom use. Effectively, with the furring system, it would look just like any modular wall. In an instance with drywall, you could epoxy paint and have that make that wall sufficient. The only problem there is if you were to have an operation where a cart or different equipment is being banged up against the wall, you could potentially have a breach with that drywall with epoxy coating. So just something to keep in mind. Nicholas said, Adam mentioned at the beginning that you can do two-story clean rooms. How do you design the HVAC system? How high should the facility be to be able to house a two-story clean room? And that's an awesome question. So on average, a clean room ceiling is going to be about 9 to 10 feet, meaning that an overall clean room building height is generally in the area of 11 to 12 feet. So that second story would start at 12 feet and go up from there. Generally, if you had somewhere in the area of 20 feet or so, maybe even a little less, you could get away with a two-story. In that case, the HVAC system would be mounted on the building roof or outside of an external wall and be ducted into the clean room from there. So the two-story for low footprint areas or low available square footage areas is a good solution to get some extra space. Ruth said, many years ago, you designed and built our clean room. What is the process if we need to move it to a different room? Great question, Ruth. So if that process was needed, we would come in and our install team would disassemble your current clean room. We would then transport it to wherever it needed to be moved, and we would reassemble it there. The good news with that is the majority of the components can be reused. Things that may not be able to be reused would be things like drop ceiling grid and a Hardwall, floor track for some of the wall systems. So it'd be a couple odds and ends that would need to be added, but 90% of your clean room is going to move right with you and be reinstalled as is. Neil said, are we as business owners expected to find correct maintenance, or is this a service provided via Thomas also? And I'll let Michael take that one.
Well, as far as correct maintenance of the clean room, I would say that would actually go back to the business owner compared to Thomas providing this, Adam, unless that's a capability that Angstrom can provide, if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, I think as far as maintenance goes, we would basically advise you on how to maintain your clean room, and then it would be on the owner to maintain it after the fact. As far as ongoing cleaning or procedure maintenance, that would be where Thomas could help out. Moving on to Andrew's question, I'm sorry if I missed this, but do you help with acquiring ISO certifications, and how often do you have to renew your certification? You didn't miss it, Andrew, so good news there. For ISO certifications, that's done by a third-party certifier, and we get the question all the time, do you certify the clean rooms that you build? The answer to that is no, because we don't want it to be misconstrued as a conflict of interest. It's easy for me to say the room is functioning at ISO 7 if I'm the one who built it. So that being said, we can either recommend a third party to you, or you can bring in your own third party to put us to the test. And generally those certifications are done either semi-annually or annually, depending on the industry that you're in. Burra asks, what's the main difference we face while designing HVAC systems when compared to other residential or commercial rooms? And that's a big question, Burra. That's a great question. The difference in cleanroom HVAC versus residential or commercial, regular commercial spaces is cleanroom HVAC is process cooling. We are cooling constantly, where residential or commercial applications are cooling to a certain set point, and then the units are cycling off. In an instance in a clean room where that unit cycles off, you run the risk of falling out of temperature and humidity control. So that unit needs to stay consistent. And that's why we need to cool consistently during clean room operations. Matthew asks, what is the best way to repair a damaged wall? Matthew, that's really going to depend on what type of wall it is. If it's drywall, you would repair it like any other drywall, and then you would repaint it with the epoxy or whatever finish you have on it that's cleanroom compatible. For a modular wall system, the constructions that we use are non-progressive. So if a wall panel in a Hardwall setup were to be run into by a forklift, we have the ability to come in, remove that damaged panel, and insert a new panel to fix that wall. So there are plenty of ways to skin that cat if and when it happens. And if you have that come up where you have damage, let us know and we can help. Burra asks, and how to identify the ISO classification based on nature of room? That's a good question, Burra. We're not necessarily, if you don't know that when you reach out, we're not looking for you to tell us that. As long as you can explain your process to us, we can guide you to the correct ISO classification for your room. Let me see. So Douglas asks, how does the compensation work? And Douglas, I'm not sure what you're meaning there. If you could elaborate, I'll definitely make sure to get back to that. Coleman asks, what is the minimum ceiling height for a rigid and soft wall clean room? Really, there is no minimum, but you want to think about your process and the people that will be working inside. The shortest ceiling that we've done is about 7 feet, and that was dependent on the height of the facility. So really, there is no minimum. From a maximum perspective, the taller the ceiling, the more filtration you need. The tallest ceiling that we've done to date is about 25 feet. So again, it just depends on your application. Neil, can clean rooms be built in regular warehouse space? Yes. That is where the majority of the clean rooms that we build go, in regular warehouse space. And because we're creating kind of a enclosed environment, the warehouse space around doesn't have a lot of bearing on the clean room itself. Neil, again, do you advise on which gases we require to feed the room after knowing our needs? Yes. So in a turnkey application, when we're doing the MEP design, we would sit and meet with you and your team, go through all the specifics of your room, and then our engineering team would work with you to develop the gases that your process needs. Let me see here. Teshbo said, I'm based in South Africa. Do you have agents or contractors this side of the world? The answer to that is we don't have anybody physically located there, Teshbo, but if you have a specific need that we may be able to help with, don't hesitate to reach out. We're not afraid to travel. RJ, when is it appropriate for modular versus stick built? Are there advantages and disadvantages? So obviously, RJ, I'm an advocate for modular construction. That's what we do, but there are just so many benefits to the customers through modular construction. I wouldn't say there's an appropriate time for one versus the other. It really just depends on your situation. For the advantages versus the disadvantages, modular obviously has a lot going in its favor, both with its flexibility, ease of construction, the cleanliness of construction, time frame to get up and running. Stick built can be a little more cumbersome, obviously a little dirtier. When you talk about cost comparisons, stick built has the advantage in that case, generally by about 10 to 15% over modular construction. But the thing to keep in mind there are significant tax advantages associated with modular construction that oftentimes outweigh any cost savings that you could get from stick built up front. So it's one of those things that if it's in question, let's talk about it and we can advise you on the proper way to proceed with your project. But there are just so many advantages with modular construction that outweigh stick built that most customers choose the modular path. Eric mentioned, from my understanding, to meet an ISO classification based on 14644-1, this only counts the particulate count. I'm asking because when does it imply anything about humidity, temperature, or is this based upon our own standards or the customers? And Eric, you hit the nail on the head. 14644-1 is dealing with the particulate count and air changes only. Temperature and humidity, if not required for your application, like a USP 797 or 800 application, is really more about comfort and what you would require. So that 14644-1 standard isn't going to call out specific temp and humidity parameters. It's really going to rely on you to guide us in that direction that you need. Lauren asks, can you work to assure me PPE, consumables, inventory, availability when my clean room is operational? I feel like, Michael, this is going to be a perfect one for you.
Yeah, I think I can handle this one. So the short answer is yes. What will happen is your Thomas sales representative will be working with your production planning team as your clean room is getting ready to come up for operation. We will then work with our inventory team to assure that you have the supplies necessary whenever you are in full operation. And of course, part of that will be making sure that the inventory is located in the closest warehouse to your facility.
Awesome. Heather asks, how do I know what kind of clean room I need? And that's a great question, Heather. So if you know you need a clean room, but you don't know what kind you need, we'd be happy to help. So really all we need to do at that point is understand your process, what you're looking to do with your clean room, and then we can explain what type of clean room you would need. Elena asked, does a clean room control sound? A good answer to that, Elena, is with a Hardwall, yes, there is some sound control in there. If you have very loud processes going on outside of the clean room, it's not going to completely drown out the sound, but it is going to deaden it and deafen it the same way that a drywall office would. In an instance like rigid wall or soft wall construction, you have less of that sound deadening capabilities. Diane asked, do you certify the clean room for cleanliness and static operation, or do you refer us to a clean room certification company instead? We typically, going back to a previous answer, we don't certify the clean rooms that we build. Generally, the clean rooms are certified by a third party, whether it's a third party certifier that we bring in or a third party certifier that the customer introduces. And generally, it's done certification is done in operation, meaning your processes are running, your people are operating at their stations. For static operation, that would mean that nobody is in the clean room, no processes are running. And we do certify, or third parties do certify at that operation too, but the majority of our certifications are done in operation. And then we answered the other question with refer you to a third party certification company. We would absolutely do that. Or like I said, our customers are welcome to bring in their own third parties. Carissa asked, can I use my existing building structure? And the answer to that is yes. So we build 2-wall, 3-wall clean rooms all the time that are snugged into a corner of a building that are utilizing an existing open wall space. So yes, you can use your existing structure. And what we would do is make sure that the wall that we're building off of is compatible for clean room use, whether we fur it out or epoxy paint it. But yes, you can use your existing facility. Neil asked, do they therefore need certification before use? And the answer to that is a little bit convoluted, Neil. It's really going to depend on your process and your application. So we've had customers build clean rooms in the past that they've never certified. We've had customers who have built clean rooms that cannot move into the clean room until it's certified. So it's really going to be dependent on your operation and your process. Diane, how fast can I start using my clean room? The answer to that, Diane, is immediately. Once everything is up and running and the room has been certified, it's good to go and you're ready to operate. Heather said, my company is not looking to build its own clean room right now. Is there a way I can rent one for a certain amount of time? That's a great question, Heather. We get that quite a bit. And the manufacturing environment as a whole is moving more towards the clean side of things. And as such, there's not a lot of free open clean room space to rent. There may be some facilities out there that will rent out clean rooms for a certain amount of time to you, but those are few and far between. An alternative to rental, if you're not looking to build your own clean room, could be clean room financing. And there are financing companies out there that will finance these clean room projects. So again, if you have that question and you're thinking about a clean room project, feel free to reach out. We can talk you through that. Eric asked, back to the question above, then would this allow me to meet an ISO 5 level 100 classification as long as particulate count is maintained within the spec? I ask this because I know the insulation properties that some modular walls may have to those in stick-built clean rooms. So yes, Eric, as long as you're within the air change and particulate counts specified under ISO 5 classification, you would certify at that level. It could be scorching hot in there, but you would certify from a particulate and air change standpoint. Sorry, it looks like Neil lost sound. He wants me to repeat his question. Do clean rooms need certification before use? So Neil, again, we've had customers that have built clean rooms that have never certified it, and we've had customers that can't move into their clean room until the room certifies. So it's really dependent on your process and what you're doing inside the room. So it really looks like we're getting to the end of the questions. I'll kick it back to you, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to chat them in. Adam, can't thank you enough, you and Angstrom, for the alliance that we've set up, and just for your participation today. You've been phenomenal in helping educate everyone, and just want to tell you that from the Thomas side, we really appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. And thank you again to everybody who logged on. Hopefully you found it helpful. And as Michael mentioned, reach out to us, sign up on the Thomas side website, Cleanroom Masterclass. Let us know how we can help, and we look forward to hearing from all of you.
Absolutely. So with that, everybody, I hope you have a great day, and we hope you found this Cleanroom Masterclass of value. And please be on the lookout for other topics in the future. Hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.